On March 15, 2019, something happened in New Zealand that broke the country. 51 people were murdered in 2 mosques. It was the deadliest shooting in New Zealand's history. 6 days later, the Prime Minister announced a ban on military-style semi-automatic weapons. 22 days later, the law passed with 119 votes in favour and just 1 vote against. By April 11th, less than a month after the tragedy, the ban was law. Meanwhile, in America, the debate hasn't moved an inch. What did New Zealand do in 28 days that America can't do in 28 years? The answer isn't what you think, and it reveals something profound about how these 2 countries see freedom itself. Let me take you back to March 2019. Christchurch, New Zealand. Population 380,000. Known for its English gardens and Gothic cathedral. It's a Friday, just before 1:30 p.m. At the Al-Noor Mosque, Friday prayers are beginning. What happens next? I'm not going to describe in detail. You probably already know. The attacker live-streamed it. He posted a manifesto. He wanted the whole world to see. New Zealand had never seen anything like this. To put this in perspective, New Zealand averages about 50 total murders per year. This single attack matched their typical annual murder count. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern addressed the nation. While the nation grapples with a form of grief and anger that we have not experienced before, we are not, and will not be, defined by this act. And then she said something that would change everything. Our gun laws will change. And she meant immediately. Here's what happened next. And I need you to pay attention to the speed of this. Day 1, March 15th, the shooting happens. Day 6, March 21st. 6 days later, Ardern announces the ban. The government will ban all military-style semi-automatic weapons, assault rifles, and high-capacity magazines. Day 11, March 26th. The cabinet formally agrees. Gun owners have until September to turn them in. Day 26, April 10th. The bill is introduced to Parliament. Day 26, evening. First reading passes unanimously. Day 27, April 11th. Second reading passes 119 to 1. 1. Single. Opposing. Vote. Day 28, April 11th, afternoon, royal assent. The law is official. 28 days from tragedy to law. New Zealand moved faster than a single lunar cycle. Now let's compare that to America. Columbine High School, 1999. 13 dead. Over a quarter-century later, no federal assault weapons ban. Virginia Tech Sandy Hook. Pulse nightclub. Las Vegas. Parkland. Uvalde. After each one, national debate. Protests. Congressional hearings. And after each one, nothing changes. Since that day in Christchurch, America has seen over 3,500 mass shootings. 3,500 mass shootings. So the question becomes obvious. Why could New Zealand do this in 28 days when America can't do it in 28 years? The answer has 3 parts. And the first one might make you uncomfortable. In America, the Second Amendment to the Constitution reads, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed." That word, right, is critical. In American legal philosophy, this isn't a privilege granted by the government. It's a right protected from the government. And in 2022, the Supreme Court changed the rules entirely. In a case called Bruin, the court created a new test for gun laws. It's no longer enough for the government to prove a law is reasonable or serves public safety. Now, any gun regulation must be consistent with the text, history, and tradition of 1791, the year the Second Amendment was written. Think about that for a moment. If a type of gun control law didn't exist when the Founding Fathers were alive, when the most advanced weapon was a musket that fired 1 round per minute, then it's nearly impossible to pass that law today. Since the Bruin decision, courts have struck down dozens of modern gun regulations using this test. Magazine capacity limits, concealed carry restrictions, even laws prohibiting guns in certain public places. If it didn't exist in 1791, it faces an almost insurmountable legal hurdle. Now here's New Zealand. Go ahead. Search for the right to bear arms in New Zealand's Bill of Rights. You won't find it, because it doesn't exist. In New Zealand, gun ownership is a privilege, not a right. The Arms Act of 1983 is very clear. Every person is entitled to a firearms license unless there is good reason to deny it. See that? You have a right to apply for a license, not a right to own a gun. To get a license in New Zealand, you need a legitimate reason, and self-defense is not valid. A safety course, secure storage, character references, a police interview, an inspection of your home. And even then, the police can say no. So when the Christchurch shooting happened, New Zealand didn't have to overcome a constitutional right. They didn't have to prove their law was consistent with 1791. They just needed a majority vote in Parliament. They got 119. In America, to change the Second Amendment, you would need 2/3 of the House, 290 votes, 2/3 of the Senate, 67 votes, 3/4 of all state legislatures, 38 states. The last constitutional amendment took over 200 years to ratify, and it was about congressional pay. Imagine trying to get 38 states to agree on gun control. This is the first reason. New Zealand's legal foundation treated guns as privileges. America's treats them as rights. Rights that courts now interpret through the lens of 1791. But that's only the beginning. Let's talk about political structure, because this is where it gets really interesting. The United States has a federal system with 3 branches of government. Legislative makes laws, executive enforces laws, judicial interprets laws. And these branches are designed to check each other. It's called separation of powers. The Founding Fathers wanted to make it hard to pass laws. On purpose. So when someone introduces a gun control bill in America, here's what has to happen. 1. House committee approval. 2. House floor vote. 218 votes needed. 3. Senate committee approval. 4. Senate floor vote. 60 votes to overcome filibuster. 5. Presidential signature. 6. Survive legal challenges in federal courts. Any single one of these can fail, and the bill dies. New Zealand has a parliamentary system with 1 House of Parliament. The party with the most seats forms the government. The leader of that party becomes Prime Minister. This is crucial. The Prime Minister isn't separate from Parliament. She leads Parliament. So when Jacinda Ardern's Labour New Zealand First Coalition held 63 seats, she could guarantee passage of any bill her coalition agreed on. There's no Senate to block it. No filibuster. No separation of powers creating gridlock. In New Zealand, 1. Cabinet agrees, executive branch. 2. Parliament votes, legislative branch. 3. Royal assent, ceremonial. Done. This is why New Zealand banned assault weapons in 28 days. Not because they don't value freedom, but because their political system is designed for decisive action when there's consensus. America's system is designed for the opposite, gridlock by default. But there's one more reason, and this is the one that Americans find hardest to accept. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Americans and New Zealanders define freedom differently. In America, freedom is often defined as freedom from restraint. The freedom to do what you want, when you want, without government interference. This is the cowboy mythology, the frontier spirit, rugged individualism. And for many Americans, owning a gun is the ultimate expression of this freedom. I'm not dismissing this. Tens of millions of Americans genuinely believe this. But in New Zealand, and much of the developed world, freedom is defined differently. Freedom isn't just the absence of government restriction. It's the presence of safety. The freedom to send your kids to school without fear. To worship without armed guards. To go to a concert without metal detectors. After Christchurch, Ardern said something that captures this. In New Zealand, there is no such thing as an individual right to bear arms. And frankly, I'm proud of that. The chamber erupted in applause. To many Americans, that statement sounds authoritarian. Oppressive even. Give up your guns? That's tyranny. But to New Zealanders after Christchurch, the opposite felt true. Allowing weapons designed to kill 50 people in minutes? That's tyranny. They saw 51 people lose the ultimate freedom. The freedom to live. Because one person exercised his freedom to own military-grade weapons. So New Zealand made a choice. The freedom of one person to own a semi-automatic weapon is less important than the freedom of everyone else to be safe from mass shootings. And here's the remarkable thing. Most gun owners agreed. They voluntarily turned in over 56,000 firearms. Not because the government forced them at gunpoint, but because they agreed with the principle. I don't need a military weapon more than those families needed their loved ones. In America, this kind of consensus is almost unimaginable, because the philosophical foundation is different. American freedom, protection from government. New Zealand freedom, protection by government. Neither is objectively right or wrong. They're just different values. But those different values lead to radically different outcomes. And this is why New Zealand could ban assault weapons in 28 days, while America can't do it in 28 years. So let's bring this back to the question we started with. It's not because New Zealanders are better people. It's not because Americans don't care about victims. It's because these are fundamentally different systems, built on fundamentally different values. America's founders designed gridlock into the system because they feared government tyranny more than anything else. New Zealand's system was designed for parliamentary efficiency because they trusted democratic majorities to act responsibly. Both systems work for the priorities they were designed around. After Christchurch, New Zealand chose collective security over individual gun rights. After hundreds of mass shootings, America has chosen, whether intentionally or by structural paralysis, to preserve individual gun rights over collective security measures. Now, full transparency, political winds do shift. The one person who voted against the ban in 2019, David Seymour, is now a minister in New Zealand's current coalition government. His party has reopened debates about gun registries and certain regulations. But here's what hasn't changed. The core ban on military-style semi-automatic weapons remains the law of the land. That's the difference between debating how much regulation and debating whether to regulate at all. You can agree or disagree with either approach. But now you understand why one country could act decisively in weeks, while the other remains locked in the same debate for decades. If this made you rethink what you thought you knew, I've got 2 videos you need to watch next. I'm documenting everything about moving from America to New Zealand. New videos every week. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.